Welcome to this SAP Thought Leadership session on how AI will redefine sustainable value. My name is Stephen Dunbar-Johnson, and as President International at the New York Times, it is my pleasure to host this evening's session. And I would like to thank Sophie and the team at SAP for their support of our climate journalism and for enabling us to come together this evening. So, during our conversation, we will be discussing the ways in which artificial intelligence can and will redefine sustainable value for business and for society. But what exactly do we mean by that? As we know, the uses of AI in sustainability context are multiplying from predictive modeling to the highly sophisticated automation of data collection and analysis. But as we also know, the existence of certain tools does not necessarily mean they will be used well or thoughtfully enough to secure long-term, meaningful outcomes. So that's the crux of what we're here to talk about today. How is the exponential development of AI already being harnessed to meet sustainability goals? And where are the companies still dragging their feet? Have the horizons of sustainability reporting and decarbonization been brought forward? How has climate innovation already been dramatically accelerated? And I think crucially, as the title of this session states, how is AI already redefining value and growth for businesses, making room for new business models to emerge while respecting planetary boundaries? And there are a few tensions we'll be exploring too, but we'll get into that later on. So those are some of the themes we will be getting into this evening. And to help us do so, I am delighted that we have been joined by a constellation of CSOs. The constellation of CSOs, that by the way is the collective noun attributed to CSOs by ChatGPT. As like stars, they provide guidance and shine a light on sustainable paths. That was the definition that ChatGPT gave for the collective noun of CSOs, a constellation. So as part of that constellation, we have SAP's brilliant Chief Sustainability and Commercial Officer, Sophia Mendelsohn. We have Natura's Chief Sustainability Officer, Angela Pinhati, who's over there, and Michal Nachmany, the founder and CEO of Climate Policy Radar, a non-profit on a mission to organize, analyze, and democratize data, I hope I got that right, on climate law and politics and policy globally. So I think we've got a really good representation in our constellation from the tech, from the B2C and non-profit sectors to provide a broad range of perspectives on this question of how AI will redefine sustainable value. But before we get going with our conversations, let me explain how this evening is going to roll. You will have noticed that you have been invited to place a sticker on your name badges or on the back of your name badges corresponding to where you are in your respective journeys to leverage AI to drive sustainable value. For those of you that have been self-attributed, a blue badge, that designates those of you who are already well advanced in your journey and have already started to leverage the benefits. Those of you that self-described yourself with orange stickers designate that you have started the journey but yet to determine or leverage any benefits. And those with red badges are those of us that have yet to embark on the journey but are very keen to learn and understand how they can get going. So we're going to start with a conversation with Sophia, and then turn to you, that's you all out there, for a 10-minute networking session where we invite you to find another participant with a different colored badge than your own. That's a different colored badge from your own, to discuss what you have heard and discuss amongst yourselves where you are on your respective journeys. I'm then going to invite Angela to join me on stage for another chat, after which again we will have another 10-minute networking session before I turn to Michal for our final chat. I hope you've all got that. You're all very bright people, so I'm expecting you have, but if you haven't, I'll repeat it a little bit later. At the end, following our two networking sessions, we have two very eminent front row speakers in the form of Karen Svensson, the Chief and Sustainability Officer of Volvo Group, and we have Dr. Kiren Dunlop, I hope she's here somewhere, or will be arriving shortly, the CEO of Climate Kick, an organization that makes systems transformation meaningful by enabling change in the places where people live and work, creating a positive feedback loop for change. Karen and Kristen will be invited to share their reflections on what they have heard this evening and pose questions, or what we call at the New York Times, provocations, to our three speakers. And we will then have some further time to network with all the plentiful food that's here and drink before you all disappear into the dark Baku night. So now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Sophia, and let's get into this conversation. Switching other mics on here.
And likewise, before we start talking, if I can welcome the people at the back of the room, you made it all the way to Baku. You might as well make it to the front of the room.
I just remind you, Sophia is the Chief Sustainability and Commercial Officer at SAP. Thank you so much for enabling us to be here this evening. Sophia, if we may, let's start with the macro picture. In your view, how are sustainable business products, portfolios, and policies already driving societal change? And how is AI contributing to making those products, portfolios, and policies more sustainable in the first place?
Well, I would start by saying we have to ensure that those working on climate solutions are comfortable using generative AI in their daily work. And if you think about it, you as climate people, as sustainability people, are a perfect match for generative AI. That's because you're already used to managing complex industrial and natural systems. These are systems you touch every day, where if you change one thing in one place, you can get a very unexpected and unpredicted result in another. These are the climate change models you already write about. These are the supply chain systems you already manage. This is the electric grid that we're already looking to make more robust. And when we put AI into the hands of climate change solutionists, if you will, we allow them to expedite their work in three ways. First, they can measure the results of their experiments better and faster. Second, they can then optimize the tweaks they're making to the systems they run. And they can predict the outcome better. And we all know how important that is, not only to trust from your employees and your board, but also to capital markets. And so this is happening already. And the sense I get is that as a sustainability community, we still see AI as something new or something external to us. And here I would encourage us to recognize how much it is already doing for sustainability and climate solutions and how much more it can do if we very much more take the reins. So, for example, with policy, which we'll hear more about, the ability of generative AI to read complex policy texts and automate corporate responses to those regulations is enormous. So for the sustainability corporate folks in the room, I'm sure you've spent the last year complaining about EU CSRD. You can imagine automating that with Gen AI. For the capital markets and investors, they are and will increasingly use AI to look at the commonalities of physical risk in their portfolio. So imagine, you think your portfolio is diverse. It is not. It has the same supply chain running underneath it. Volvo is smiling, right? It's the same exposure to flooding in steel manufacturing in China. And then most importantly and closest to my personal heart is what generative AI and sustainability can do specifically for product. So at a base minimum, we should be improving predictive maintenance, improving route optimization. But most importantly, this is the unlock for the much talked about and yet to be delivered on circular economy, right? Because with generative AI, oh, I gotta laugh, all right. With generative AI, what you can do is test material databases to create fabrics and products that are actually designed to be taken back and reused. And then you can use the same technology to predict where those materials are going to be needed at their next stage of life. You're effectively doubling the efficiency of our economy.
And can I just ask on that? You at SAP are talking to a broad church of sectors. Are there any particular sectors that you're talking to now where you think are more advanced than others in this?
I think to be provocative and keep jet-lagged folks awake, I'd say the question is best answered not by sectors, but by executive type. My deep concern, and I say this genuinely to the sustainability community, is that as an executive at a technology company, I see CFOs, CPOs, CTOs, CIOs racing to apply generative AI to their daily work. I do not see CSOs in this conversation. And when we do, we are relegated to cleaning up the dirty externality of ROI. I'll pick on the Times because it's fun because you're sitting here. And all the questions we've gotten from the press are about the extra energy it's going to require. It is a huge topic. It should not be glossed over. It must be addressed on a different panel.
It was going to be my next question, so go ahead. Yeah.
But it is the chief sustainability officer, the delegate at the conference here who must demand that as we prioritize the application of this new technology, part of the definition of success of using it is a more sustainable outcome. Otherwise, we will just get faster consumption, quite like going from, H&M to, well, I'm not supposed to use exact names, but H&M to even faster fashion.
But does that mean that as you're applying AI, recognizing that it is very energy intensive, it is going to raise the amount of emissions, but if you need to prove the net benefit is going to be positive.
It is a literal ROI equation. And thus far, I have seen climate change and sustainability practitioners relegated to only being allowed to engage in the investment, the I in the ROI. And we must be much more aggressive on the return because our colleagues are, and they will not stop to ask us if they can use the energy.
I think I'd love to get some further thoughts on that a little later on. So how can, the other question is, so how might AI help us act as if there is a price on carbon?
And this is also an appropriate time to recognize the global shifts in policy, which cannot be ignored as we have these conversations here in Baku. And I would say we should recall that we've been here before, right? We have leaned in as private markets, as capital markets, as companies with profit to deliver before. And here, I would say there's a very clear call to action for the private sector engaged in climate change. And that is to go from thinking about the externality of greenhouse gas emissions in scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, whatever standard you would like to use, to thinking about it on the product level. Because actually the economy trades in discrete products. So on the simplest level, ask yourself as a consumer, are you more worried about the collective footprint of the Dairy Cooperation of New Zealand or the carton of milk in your hand? Likewise, the EU, Australia, China, Canada are much more worried about the number of units of goods flowing across their borders and making sure that there is a tariff, a price on carbon, protectionism on that. And as a community, we can get ready for this moment by going from scopes 1, scopes 2, scopes 3 to product carbon footprint, the footprint of the car itself rather than the footprint of Volvo. And this will help make it much more tangible to the regulators looking to ensure equitable markets, as well as the consumers that we need to bring along on this journey.
I've lost my timekeeper, so I'm just going to ask you one more question, if I may. I can't read that from over here. I'm an old man, so and this is not an AI question. Thank you. How do Yeah, I mean, this is a ramification of the election a few days ago in the United States. Do you think there's going to be a rollback on ESG, particularly in the United States?
Well, I think the first thing to remember is that ESG is a capital markets construct, right? So it was designed to add additional factors to investment theses for those creating portfolios, particularly ones who want to be creating active portfolios and combating passive indices. So the reaction to that as a business model is very different to the reality that whatever we call it, whether we like it or not, physical climate risk is a physical reaction. And that physical reaction is already being reflected in our value chains, in our supply chains. And if you take it back to our portfolio, which we so falsely think is diversified, there will be a pinch on natural resources that will be reflected in a pinch on earnings. And call it ESG or not, the realities of climate change will be reflected in the bottom line.
So I'm going to take that as a no, probably. One final question is on going back to AI and greenwashing. How do you think, or will it affect our ability to understand those companies that are greenwashing versus those that are making meaningful actions?
I mean, I have a scripted answer for this, but given the level of expertise and intelligence in the room, I'll just give you what I really think, which is that I think we have come out of the tranche of greenwashing, that initial shock that the consumer is looking for this information, and quickly can the marketing department not just say something on the carton? We are very much there, and I no longer see a greenwashing conversation. I see a tolerance conversation. How tolerant are you of the trade-offs required? And as the representative of a major brand, of a major auto company, of a major consumer goods company, how willing are you to say, we can make it better, but we can't make it perfect?
Sophia, thank you very much. We're going to hear a little bit from you again later, but I really appreciate you doing this. Please give a thank you. So, as I mentioned in my intro, before we hear from our next speaker, we're now going to have you guys do a little bit of work. We're going to have 10 minutes of what they described here as structured networking, also known at the New York Times as herding cats. So let's see how this goes. When we came to this room, as I said earlier, you should have answered our networking question, which is, I remind you once more, to what degree is your organization already using AI to deliver its sustainability strategy? You should all have a sticker corresponding to the answer. I don't actually see any stickers. I think they're on the back of your cards. So you might want to flip your cards over. So I'm going to ask you to find someone with a different colored sticker to you and have a chat about your own journey and where you see it. There's a gentleman over there with a red badge, I see, but please flip yours and find somebody with a different sticker from yours. Angela, before we get going, could you just give us, for those of us that don't know, I actually do know Natura because my wife is a big consumer of your products, but could you tell everybody about what Natura is and, yeah. Thank you.
So for those who does not know Natura, Natura is a multinational Brazilian company. We own two brands worldwide. One is Natura brand and the second one is the Avon brand. Natura is a company of around $5 billion of net revenue. And we are an omni-channel model, but most part still based in direct sales. So just in Latin America, we have around 4 million people selling products for Natura and Avon, which already give us a strong base in the social impact that we work a lot with.
What and else because you work with indigenous communities for a lot of your in the Amazon.
So Natura, since it has its very beginning, works with sustainability as a core asset. So by the years of 2000, we developed a brand called Ecos Line. This Ecos Line was based in actives from Amazon rainforest. And within the time, we developed around 45 actives being produced for in 44 communities, which encompasses more than 10,000 families. In these families, generally we have smallholders, indigenous peoples, and people that live around the Amazon rainforest. At the beginning, we used to buy cities with a huge carbon footprint, because imagine you to make the whole logistics from Amazon rainforest to São Paulo. It's almost 3,000 kilometers far. And as the demand has evolved a lot, we implemented 19 small factories in these communities. So nowadays, the families not just harvest the cities, but they also produce butters, oils, and essential oils for us, which helped us in one of our targets that were to increase the income for those families. It's quite important to say for the ones that want to preserve the Amazon rainforest, the only way to do this is to provide income for the families that depend on the nature and biodiversity. Okay?
So thank you. That's
just to add another information. Within this whole work, we preserve 2 million hectares of standing forests doing this whole without deforestation.
And I was going to say that for those of you here, I would urge you before I haven't warned you about this, but Natura have a factory very close to Berlin. We're about 30 kilometers away. So you will be able to explain what you're doing and also have some tours of the rainforest. So those of you who want to sign up a year ahead, I would urge you to do so now. You're going to kill me for this later.
No. It's going to be a pleasure to show, because something is how when you hear about us and what we've been doing. The other thing is when you go to the community and you feel and you hear from them the impact that one company can cause. And then the invitation is, imagine you if we could have other companies doing the same kind of job that we do, it would be a real force for good.
So talking about a force for good, we hope, can you give us a sense of how Natura is currently using AI for sustainability and what are the results that you're seeing?
Okay, I can use it, and I will start for the not so charming side of sustainability, that it is all the annual reports, all the key indicators that we gotta generate worldwide. So one of the things is that our department encompasses data from across all the business, the entire business, and we are on that journey to automatically collect information from various sources. We have more than 60 systems in Natura from different regions and different brands. So this is a huge challenge. And a couple of years ago, we also developed a tool, a methodology that's called integrated profit and loss. That is an accounting balance in which we have the financial capital together with human capital, social capital, and natural capital. So within this methodology, I can nowadays say that for one net revenue dollars that Natura generates, we impact positively the people and nature in $2.7. But for doing this whole calculation in the past, it took us months to do, like 3 months to do the whole calculation, because I should take numbers from the whole company. Using AI, nowadays we can do this in a very, very fast way. And it gives us very good ways, indicates which are the projects that we should work on in order to have positive impact in all the capitals. So this is the not so bright side. But I would like to go to the another part of the history, that's the good one. When we see, for example, innovation, Natura is using, our R&D department is using AI to develop fragrances with lower carbon footprint. So this is how you can use AI innovating in your own products to generate lower impact in the footprint.
How does that work?
Well, we evaluated the whole supply chain of our suppliers and the kind of raw material that is going to compose a fragrance. For those who does not know, in a fragrance, sometimes you have more than 200 ingredients just in one formulation. So we've been evaluating that, and as we've been working with life cycle analysis since 2009, we are progressing towards the lowest impact. So we are having very good positive results.
So the lowest impact, but can I just ask you the same question about the emissions required to generate the AI? Are you confident that the net is still positive despite those extra emissions that I imagine are being created by the
Yes, yeah, I do think that it's a funny discussion, this one, no, but I do think that we need, and I've heard this week, we need to use AI with very good attention to put to focus our efforts with AI in things that really matters to the business, and not as a distraction. So it's attention with intentionality. I think by doing that, we are going to have the best use of this tool.
What role do you think AI is going to play in shaping a new decision-making culture, promoting collaboration, partnership, best practice for your industry?
So I would give you 2 examples that we are currently working on. So trying to reduce the carbon footprint of Natura. It's important to say that 98% of our carbon footprint, it is in the scope 3. So trying to work within that, and from this 98%, almost 40 comes from formulation or packaging material. So we invited our main suppliers to be with us in what we have called a regenerative supply chain, trying to engage them in SBTi commitments, and within that, trying to integrate the whole carbon footprint of these suppliers. So what we intend to do for the next steps, it's how AI could help us to show the pain points in the whole value chain of Natura, which encompasses all the suppliers, for us to focus projects to reduce the impact of carbon footprint. So if you are going to do this manually, it's going to take time, and I think really we do not have time for that, But just to give you an example, we've been working a lot with our fragrances. So trying to reduce the carbon footprint, we added the post-consumption glasses in the bottle, and this reduced the carbon footprint, but you have a limit to maintain the quality. So the next step was we needed to talk with the supplier. And then we said, well, if this guy changed his energetic source for his furnace, this would reduce almost 20% in the impact of one bottle total of my fragrance. So this is doing one by one. Imagine the power how we can scale in a faster way by using AI. And the second one that we are really running now, we have a partnership with Google, and we are working in a just transition map. So as I told you, in Latin America, we have 4 million beauty consultants. And together with Google, we mapped the extremely weather and how we can be preventive checking when and where this is going to happen, how we can add our beauty consultant map together with this climate matter map, and then we add information to our whole chain of consultants, trying to be preventive, mitigating the impacts of extremely weather, and besides that, how we can influence and work in advocacy with the government, trying to improve the quality of life of these people, infrastructure, and things like that.
So, but that's not about selling more of your products to your 4 million consumers in Latin America. It's just a service that you're providing with Google to make them aware of climate impacts and how weather is going to impact them. Is that?
Exactly. But imagine in the end, it's about business, because in a flood, as we had in the south of Brazil, we had more than a month of our beauty consultants not selling, not living, not doing. So maybe companies are not aware of how much being preventive, working in initiatives such as like that, you can in the end take care of your business, because the climate change definitely is going to impact us.
Angela, I'm afraid we're out of time, but I'm not going to let you go before I ask you this question. Is that you are, as we say, you have a factory outside of Belém. A lot of the focus seems to be a huge focus on Brazil and COP next year. Are you confident, both from a logistics point of view, that there will be infrastructure point of view, that it will be successful?
No, definitely.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. No, definitely. I think it's going to be successful because I think it's a huge opportunity for us to have the biodiversity and climate agenda all together. Definitely, we needed to talk about biodiversity, climate, and people all together at once, because this is the way that life happens. Everything mixed and together. In the logistically way of thinking, I think everybody knows we got a challenge to prepare Belém and to receive the amount of people that are planning to go there. But as I told you, Brazilian, people.
You're resourceful.
No, we are creative.
Inventive, creative, right?
Creative.
Resourceful and creative.
So let's hope for the better.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Angela. So we're now going to go to the second cat herding exercise. It's exactly the same as the first, with one difference. Same question, but we're going to ask you to go to people who have the same color designation as you've given yourself. So seek them out Same question. To what degree is your organization already using AI to deliver its sustainability strategy? And we will reconvene for our final session and our provocations after this. I'd like to now welcome our third and final speaker for this evening to the stage, Dr. Michal Nachmany, founder and chief executive officer of Climate Policy Radar. I said a few things about what you do in the introduction, but I suspect people may have forgotten now. So could you just give us a pithy response to that question again? What is it that you do?
You know those long climate policy documents you need to read and how they're 80 pages long and they're in lots of languages, and if you want to find out who's done it already so you could convince your board that you're not the first, or if you need to read climate litigation documents because you're assessing your liability risk or you're making an insurance decision, or if you're reading project proposals and you're asking who's done this already. And that's long and that's messy, and if you don't make the way to put them all in one place and read them and make sense of them quickly, then you just won't read them, and then we're stuck with the status quo, and the status quo is not so hot, right? And enter AI, large language models, natural language processing, the ability to make sense of a mess of unstructured data. That's what we do. We are the one-stop shop for all of the climate laws, policies, submissions to the UNFCCC, soon coming climate litigation and corporate reporting. As of today, all of the projects by all of the multilateral climate funds are all in one place, all machine readable, and we're attacking them with a bunch of tools. So enjoy.
So you're effectively if I've understood correctly, a repository for all of the existing laws around climate around the world. I can access them through you, and in so doing, I don't have to wade through a document of 100 or 50 pages. I can get a pithy synopsis. Is that correct?
The synopsis is coming. Gen AI is something that we can obviously apply very irresponsibly, and we can apply responsibly. We'll talk about that in a second. What are some of the pitfalls and dangers about having a non-nuanced approach to AI, so we can talk about that. But yes, that's exactly what we're going. So if you're walking that halls at COP, you want a one-pager in font 17 that will tell you what your co-negotiators have just agreed on. If you're an insurance company trying to price an insurance product, you want an API with very detailed data. If you're a researcher trying to figure something out, if you're a policymaker trying to write a law, all of those are very different ways of processing this similar information. In all of that, we're the ecosystem service, if you like, that powers all of those above us who are domain experts, who are research firms, who are policy analysis firms, who are CSOs, constellations of CSOs, who need this information in very different formats. But you can't model anything, you can't make any decisions. And the main decisions we need are better policy and moving money from the old economy to the new economy, right? Those are if we get these two things right, we're sorted. For all of those, we need the data that sits underneath in an accessible format, and that's what we do.
So actually, also a great resource for climate journalists.
Absolutely.
For our climate journalists. So let's talk about the crucial ethical dimensions in this discussion. How, for example, can we ensure that policy promotes the positive use of AI?
So let's have a nuanced conversation about what AI is, and let's drop the A for a second, and let's talk what intelligence is. Intelligence is the ability to take lots of data, make sense of it in a way that is useful for you, and make and know, by the way, which data to take, right? You want only the trustworthy data. Intelligent people tend to know what is trustworthy and to trust that, to take that, to process that, and to make an informed decision based on that data. So that's intelligence. As all of you are intelligent people, when you add the A in front of it, the artificial or the augmented, that's machines and humans working together, you know that you can do it faster, better, with more data, and the ability to do it faster is critical for climate, for nature, for all of those things. But when we look at that, we break that into its parts and we say, okay, so what are the risks here? So it's the data, and data is a huge part of AI. There is a huge problem with availability of data, with accessibility of data. Many of you work in the global south, where just the ability to get to that data and then factor it, of course, into the models is critical. When you don't put the right data in the model, the model is biased. So this is right, the processing information. Biased information leads to flawed responses. So when we say, let's use AI, we should say, let's use good AI, because the risk is, let's apply AI, let's put some bot on it, ask a question, listen to the response, say, okay, great, no hallucination. But what was the model trained on? And being able to do so is critical. So we have a data problem, we have a modeling problem, and then we have an application problem, which is the ability to take that and make sense of it in a way that is useful for you. If you're on Google Maps and you say, take me from place A to B, then Google Maps should ask you, do you want to get there in the shortest way, in the fastest way, like in the shortest geographically, in the quickest way, in the greenest way? All of those are normative decisions, because only you know if you want today the most scenic route or if you want it in the shortest way. Take an energy transition equivalent of that. Do you want to decarbonize fast, or do you want to decarbonize equitably? Do you want to decarbonize with the communities or without the communities, right? There are very different ways of getting to a point. And all of those things are normative decisions. They're highly localized. They're highly customized. The ability to distinguish fact from opinion, fact from norms, is a critical part of AI. And a lot of the AI systems that we see now are very non-nuanced. I'm adding to that, and this is where the actual constellation, human intelligence, needs to feed into that. We have a human skill gap that doesn't allow us to have that conversation. We don't have enough knowledge, and that leads us. We don't have enough skills. Think about your companies. How many people who really understand AI, which is a rapidly developing field right now? I run an AI firm, and we are just getting there because everyone is there. That border is moving constantly. And we see everyone around us not really knowing, but applying solutions dramatically and fast, and investing a lot of money in it, and investing a lot of resources. And once you're locked into a system, then you use it, because that's how systems work, right? So there's a lot of nuance that we need to be very, very careful about. And I'm going to add a final one that is, of course, the resource constraint. I'm sure as chief sustainability officers and people working in the field, the data center question is a huge one for you. I want to make it a little more nuanced. There is data centers. There is AI, which is a part of what's happening in data centers. And data centers is a big deal, right? There's a lot of energy, the size of Japan. 3.5% projections of global emissions in a few years. That's big. Data centers power lots of things. AI is a fraction of what they power. And yes, AI will grow, but it is still a fraction. So AI is not that 3.5% training models and using models. You have your entire internet and search and TikTok and Facebook and whatever running on it, financial transactions, IoT, all of that. So that's data center emissions to be separated from AI. And there's AI for good. There's what is the carbon price and the water price, of course, and the labor price associated with the AI for good. That's even a smaller fraction. So when we compare and when we ask, is it worth doing AI for advancing climate solutions? It is not putting that against that 3.5% of global emissions. And the ability to do so fast is really critical.
So are you practicing that yourself? Do you know what your emissions are now from all the AI work that you're doing?
They are a tiny, tiny, tiny fragment. We don't train our own language models. We fine-tune and do some domain training on large language models. We use a Google Translate API in order to translate documents. That's a tiny thing that is a risk. And I don't think that someone who's been working in climate for 17 years can be accused of dismissing the huge risk of emissions. But there's a risk of hijacking the conversation by that and not actually being able to use AI for good if we constantly say, but what about the emissions from AI? So there's a real risk in that. And that doesn't mean that we don't need to worry about the emissions of data centers and electrifying and taking care of that, and water, which is a huge story. The politics of AI is also critical, of course, because when we talk about data, we also not only think about what's the data that we read and are able to take into our decision making, but also what is the data that we don't read. This is the bits that elections get decided on. And when elections get decided on fragmented, siloed data, then we end up with regimes that might not be so great for climate. So the content bias and the ability to look at algorithmic bias in the design of our models is also one of the critical risks. It's one of the least talked about when we talk about AI for climate as well.
It's so fascinating. Can we just, in the last couple of minutes we have, just zoom out a little bit and let me ask you the question: how businesses and governments work? How can businesses and governments work together to integrate the positive use of AI and enhance climate action? I don't know if you've got any specific examples that you could give us.
I'll give you a great example. The Nobel Prize that just went to the mRNA vaccines was built only because, so the COVID vaccines that were developed on the basis of the mRNA research was developed on the basis of open science. Years of open publications, years of genomic mapping that allowed innovation in the private sector and in governments and in research organizations and by nonprofits to build on that rich shared public good of data and of models, the ability to learn from each other, to avoid redundancy, to scale fast. All of that can be replicated to climate. Open climate data should be a public good. The models underpinning it should be the models should be open. The data underpinning it should be open. All of that is what will enable everyone to race forward with solutions that can make everyone tons of money and reduce emissions and increase resilience, which we shouldn't forget to talk about. So that openness, which also goes a long way towards reducing bias, by the way, because sunlight is a very good disinfectant. You can look at a model and you can say, oh, that's biased, or there isn't enough information. You can bring more data. You can channel resources. I would encourage us to be more like the doctors.
Thank you. I noticed that Sophia was nodding with great vigor on the point of particularly the media focusing on the emissions of OpenAI. So point taken and points well made by both of you. I'm going to ask you an off-the-cuff question here. I just think we did a brief run around of around the badges and the designations that people gave themselves, and it seems that the ladies in the crowd, I was pointing out earlier, have tended to give themselves a designation of not knowing much about AI, whereas most of the men have said that they know more than the ladies. Do you have a comment on that? As a sort of social observation of
Well, I mean, when we hire people for roles, we always know that we need to correct, because when you advertise a job, then a woman will always give herself, I only tick 7 of the 10 boxes, and a man will always give themselves 12 out of the 10 boxes. So I imagine that we're seeing a version of that here. Some of my most brilliant colleagues are non-male in the AI sector, and mainly some of the most loud voices acting for climate, whatever tools we use, are the ones who their emotional intelligence and their empathy and compassion and ability to connect and build bridges are the highest, whatever gender they are.
Well, I will just add to that and say that we spend quite a lot of time trying to curate these sessions, and we don't put a gender bias on it, but in curating this session, it's no coincidence that every single one of the speakers are women. So
it's an assumption that you made. You didn't get us to put our pronouns.
So maybe AI is going to help us in disinfect, if that's the right word. It's not the right word, but I'll use it. The inbuilt bias that we have. So thank you very much for that session. Please give her a warm hand. So I think, Sophia, we're going to take a 2-minute break. Are our front row speaker, are you ready to give some thoughts now? Or would you like a couple of minutes to gather your thoughts, or do you want to, we're ready to go. Okay. So why don't you come up here? I'm going to stand to one side. So the idea is just for a minute or so, a couple of minutes or so, if you could give us just a little bit of thoughts about what you've heard this evening, And also anything that you think, and I'm sure there's a lot we've missed, but if you've a couple of things that you think we should have been focusing on, would be very helpful. So, Kiren, do you want to kick off? Is that okay? Kiren, I remind you, is the Chief Sustainability Officer of Volvo Group.
So thank you very much. I think this has been a very interesting discussion, and a couple of thoughts from my side that many times I've been asked this question, at least the last 2 years, if I can talk about AI and sustainability. And I always find that a little bit difficult because I'm thinking, is AI something special for sustainability, or isn't that just a tool? But today I think actually I got some answers to that. I think the first reflection I made is that AI is perfect for sustainability because of the complexity of sustainability. I very often talk about that we are now ready from a vehicle manufacturer's perspective. We have all the technology ready. We know what needs to be done, but nevertheless, the transition doesn't happen. So it's super complex. We also know that we have many policies and things in place, but it doesn't happen. And maybe AI can be a tool to actually look upon the complexity of the whole ecosystem. So I think that's one of my reflections. The other reflection is, why isn't CSOs more interested in AI? Maybe because many women are CSOs, I don't know, and women might be less interested. But I think maybe it is because we are seeing AI more as a problem than an opportunity. If I look upon our company, we use AI quite a lot, and we use it mainly as a part of our innovation chain. And that's something that is not only something I deal with as a CSO, but very much also as a CTO, where we use AI to enhance our services to our customers. And it's also very tightly connected to our electrification journey. One thing I didn't hear anything about in the first two speakers, and I thought, yes, I have something that I can say. But then the third speaker talked about the more ethical part of AI, and I think that's really worth mentioning also. So yeah, that's a little bit of my reflections.
Kiren, thank you very much. I think I certainly get the impression that it's overwhelmingly positive impact. That maybe not overwhelming, certainly a positive impact. Dr. Kiren Dunlop is the Chief Executive Officer of Climate Kick. You are a lady who has a reputation for having forthright views. So let's have some of those forthright views now.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you. That was absolutely fantastic series of crisp, thoughtful, thought-provoking and detailed expose. I was, one of the things that I had wanted to ask about, Michal actually went to, which is what is the training data? Where is the source code coming from? And if you think about information needing to be digitalized in order to feed into AI, then think about where information that is digitalized in the world comes from. Very, very significant parts of the global south or global majority are not feeding digitalized information into our global repository of what we're calling knowledge. And when you put a search out into OpenAI and GPT asking for the world's knowledge on X, you are effectively getting a recolonizing of the world, normalizing all knowledge through to who knows in digital format. So that is one of the things that deeply concerns me, hence initiatives that we're doing in digital justice. But you named it. Thank you. I think there are two things that I'm sitting with. This is super raw, so just because I consider this to be one of the rawest things that we are handling. And one very big question that has to do with this session. The two things that I'm sitting with are, if we think, so I was just thinking across everything of what I heard and thinking about it seems to me that the biggest challenge here is literacy. Artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence is an exponential instrument. And that requires those using it to begin to understand exponential possibilities. So I hear a confirmation of something that I'm concerned about, which is we are using this in incremental, linear ways. We're applying a set of patterned assumptions about how you improve businesses through continuous improvement, efficiency, incremental change. We're not really asking ourselves, what does an exponentially equipped instrument make it possible to do? So, for example, generative AI producing designs for the nanostructures of, say, steel coating in Volvo to work out how would you reduce wind resistance and therefore reduce fuel consumption. But that's not necessarily something that the vast majority of people, say, on the manufacturing lines of trucks will know is possible. So I have a huge question around how would we make the speed of literacy even vaguely correlative to the speed of intelligence growth of AI. And then the second thing I'm sitting with is the other side of that, which is the tool doesn't solve the capabilities of the people using it. So if the people using it are not trained to think systemically, are not incentivized to design systemically, and are not incentivized to change the core human paradigm for life, then they're not asking the tool to do that with them and for them. And then I wonder whether those who are thinking like that, is this actually this moment where we really, really struggle to let go of the control of our own destinies, in the same way in which we really struggle to let go of the idea of our dominion over nature and our complete immersion in and interdependence on nature? Is there a problem, in fact, in our unwillingness intuitively to allow an instrument to know better and to start to play back to us? The question I had with respect to all of us is, we've had a conversation which is not in response to the title of this session. We've had a conversation about how is AI going to enhance or enable sustainability? But that question is a very different question. How will AI redefine sustainable value? And I'm still sitting with the question of where does that take us? But that would be my question to us.
Which means we need another dinner.
We need another dinner. We won't have another dinner. There is going to be more food later, so we can eat and digest on that question. But actually, let's have that question. I'm going to now. Thank you so much. That was brilliant. Do you want to come back on stage very briefly? Very briefly. With this will only take. We're only going to give you a minute per person to respond to those provocations, which is a bit unfair. The first one, I think, which I thought was very interesting, is this. Can I use the words global north and global south? If I've understood you correctly, there's a gap between the inputs coming from the north and the south, and which is therefore disadvantaging the south. Any thoughts on? Does anybody want to pick that one up?
Sure. Think about language. Think about training models on only English language documents, because most of the internet, that's what they do. But that doesn't make any sense, because that's not how knowledge is represented. And Kirsten made that point very clearly. In order for us to fix climate change, we need to fix it all across the world. By the way, not only reducing the emissions, but also increasing the resilience, which is obviously burdens much more those who have contributed the least to climate change. And the ability to then integrate that knowledge about resilience, about readiness for extreme weather events that happen all over, but again, the poor, the black, the brown, the global south communities underrepresent the emissions, bear the brunt of that. Their data is not there, and their accessibility and ability to use the systems is not there. So there needs to be a very, very intentional shift of resources in order to correct that gap. We know that is true, and we know that communities in global south, and you know this very well, have been the guardians of our nature, the guardian of our food systems, the guardian of the lungs that are the Amazon forest and the Congo Basin forest and the Indonesian river forest. And all of those are critical. And the ability to integrate their knowledge into what we do is critical for that.
And the question about, or the point about AI literacy through the workforce, which was the other point, that it can if it stays at a certain level, how do we make it cascade down so that the implementation can be useful? And also, I guess another aspect would be, how can we get information bubbling up from people in terms of how the people actually on the ground can think AI can be more effective? Would any of you like to have a crack at that one?
I don't know. Can start from here. I think by first inclusion. No, so how to guarantee that global? From the previous question, how to guarantee that Global South is really in the development of AI? No, by starting by the language, that most parts is not speaking English, and it's hard for us to be here in a conversation like that. We start from a different perspective and ways of discussing and adding our suggestions is not always easy to do that. And for me, how to cascade, I think it's important to understand what are the needs that, for example, smallholders, indigenous people, but even in the cities, what are the needs that the Global South have compared to the rest of the world? No? Another day I was in a course in Switzerland, and the guy said, well, the social aspect is difficult because social, somebody from Africa would like to have a living like we have here in Switzerland. I said, you don't know nothing. Somebody from Africa or from Brazil or Latin America just want to have a better way of living. It's far away from what you have in Switzerland. So sometimes even this discussion, people cannot realize because they do not understand from where people are coming from. No, so I think we need to use AI not to go to Mars, but to solve the real problem that people are currently facing. No, another day I discovered that there is a day for the toilet day, and I said, well, stranger. And then I discovered that almost 50% of the population does not have a real toilet to use. So we should use AI with this attention and intentionality to solve real social and nature and biodiversity problems that we are already facing. That's for me.
Can I answer your question a little more?
Pithily.
Do it. You're not observers, you're participants. Take it to your companies. Demand your supply chains to do it. Hold a training day. Invite experts. Learn about AI. Catherine Hayhoe's a climate scientist says the best thing you can do to fight climate change is talk about it. The best thing you can do to use AI is talk about it. And like, this room represents people who have the power to do work. Do it.
Yeah, and there are great organizations like the Climate School that are doing work in this area as well. So the last, so we were given, Kirsten, you at the end said that we didn't actually address the question on the docket. So can
I saw it coming, and I just thought, oh my God, people are so desperate for the bar. Maybe he won't do it, but he did it. How will AI redefine sustainable value? I think for a long time that sustainability has attempted to fit itself into the paradigm of exponential growth. And it just might be that the combination of sustainability and AI is what we've needed to stop expanding like this and double down and circle back.
That was pithy. You want to have a quick come back? She doesn't want to have a go. Okay. We have, but I know that everybody's had a long day, but the bar is open. There's still food being served. You can stay for as long as this organization will allow, then they'll kick you out. Those that need to leave, we totally understand, but you're very welcome to stay and continue the conversation and network amongst yourselves. Thank you very much to all of our participants. Thank you to Thank you to SAP, who have been a stalwart supporter of New York Times climate journalism and our live climate events, and we're deeply appreciative of it. And thank you all for making the trip, and thanks for our front row commentators for your participation as well. Thank you, everybody.